All right, so I'm Johnny Stoddard. This is Jeff Whitlock. Jeff is going to be going to McKinsey after this summer, and he has agreed to do a behavioral type of question. This is one that would be very similar to what you'd see in a McKinsey type of interview. McKinsey interviews, typically they'll ask you a question about, tell me a time that you did something like this in your lifetime, and then ask a lot of follow-up questions to really get at, what it was you were thinking, what your assumptions were, how you were cognizant of other people in the situation, to really get a feel for how it is that you handle situations. So that's what we're going to try to kind of simulate here. All right, Jeff, so tell me about a time that you had to overcome a challenge.
Okay, yeah, thanks for asking. So one challenge that was really significant in my life that happened a few years ago. I had spent 2 years volunteering, having a good experience in West Africa as a volunteer, and I left all my financial affairs in the hands of some people close to me. And when before I left to volunteer for 2 years, I attended college, so I had some outstanding student loans and things, and because of policy procedures, I couldn't apply for deferment until 6 months after I left the country, so I had some people who were supposed to take care of that. Unfortunately, due to oversight on their part, a few things didn't get taken care of. So I was out of the country in West Africa without any cell phone communications or anything.
Sure.
These loans actually went into default.
Wow.
And so, unbeknownst to me, and no communication was getting to me. So when I came home after my 2 years, I was home for just a little bit, and I actually transferred universities to Brigham Young University. And when I got here, I realized very quickly that I had had some loans in default for several months. Mm-hmm. And this prevented me from getting student loans and other sorts of financial aid that were going to help me to continue with my school, which was a really big challenge because I'd already come here. So it got to the point where actually I met with a financial advisor, and he's told me, well, you know what, there's not really anything we can do. I guess you'll just have to go home. And I was like, no, we have to work through this. So that was the problem. And so what I ended up doing is two things. One, I ended up actually networking my way in school to the person who was in charge of short-term loans. Okay. And I got them to actually extend the deadline of my short-term loan.
Awesome.
So I was able to have a little bit more leeway in finding how to get these defaults off my record. Then what I did is I kind of looked at my network of people who I might know. Of course, I don't really come from a wealthy family, so I didn't actually have any close relatives who I felt like would be able to help me with that kind of money. Mm-hmm. But I identified several people within my network that I thought would be potentially willing to help me out, and narrowed it down to a few. I ended up contacting the person I thought would be most likely to help me out, and I explained the situation, and he was actually pretty willing to help, and said he would help me out on the condition that he called it a grant loan, basically saying he would actually just as a gift pay half, but that I'd have to pay back the other half. And so I agreed to those terms. Very grateful, and I worked really hard to be able to pay him back the other half of that loan, and since then I've been cruising at BYU.
Made it through, that's awesome. So that's a very interesting story. So just as a follow-up question, you said that you looked through your network to find a few people that you feel comfortable going to and asking for financial assistance. Right. What criteria did you use to kind of identify those people?
Well, one, whether or not they had money.
Sure. That's probably A on the list.
It's pretty important. Or not, if not, I would call Gramps and be like, hey, Grandpa.
Sure.
But no, so yeah, that honestly, I joke about it, but that was one of the things I looked at. Also, the other thing I looked at is basically what my relationship was with this person, and whether or not I felt that they knew me enough to trust me. Because I didn't want it to feel like a charity type of thing. Maybe it's my pride, maybe not, but I wanted to feel like, hey, consider this like an investment in me, and I promise I'm good for it, I'll pay you back. So I like kind of identified each relationship and made sure that they knew me well enough to have enough experiences with me in the past to be able to trust me and understand like my character and my ethic. Okay. That was probably the number one thing, besides the fact that I felt like they were financially comfortable enough to do that. I didn't want to put people in an uncomfortable situation where they weren't able financially to do it, but wanted to. Okay. I wanted to try to avoid that. So it would be pretty awkward. No,
that makes sense. I think that's good criteria. So just another follow-up question. So it sounds like you found somebody who was willing to help you, and he gave you a grant loan to get through school. So how was it? Walk me through a little bit what the conversation was like. How it was that you persuaded him to go through with giving you that loan.
Okay, good. So the nice thing about the person I contacted actually had spent some time with me in West Africa. So we had worked together on some projects out there. So he had worked with me closely, and so I think because of that he was sympathetic. And this is actually, I probably should have said this in the last question. But this was actually kind of why I identified him first, was because we had this common understanding, because he had been there and he understood the situation, that it wasn't really easy to get communication.
Sure.
Because some person might just say, why did you let this happen? Why weren't
Sure.
you following up frequently enough?
Sure.
But he kind of understood the dynamics of the situation, that communication was really difficult,
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't something that was feasible, and that like the people I had entrusted with, I had no real reason to assume they weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
And so he really understood that situation, and that from his prior experiences, and on top of me explaining it clearly, and basically just saying like,